On a crisp autumn morning, October 14th, 1066, fate crept silently over the rolling fields of Senlac Hill near the town of Hastings, and in a single day, the soul of England would be forever rewritten. It wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning, a clash of ambition, blood, and destiny. On one side stood King Harold II, the last great Anglo-Saxon ruler, his warriors hardened by recent conflict, their shield wall as immovable as a stone cliff battered by the tide. On the other side, Duke William of Normandy, a man forged by politics and war, who claimed, fiercely and unyieldingly, that the throne of England had been promised to him by Edward the Confessor. The air was thick with tension, a silence before the storm, as two cultures, two claims, and two visions of England prepared to collide. The morning sun glinted off iron helmets, horses pawed nervously at the earth, and war horns sounded like distant thunder. It was more than a military confrontation. It was a turning point carved into the spine of history. And when the dust settled, it would not be Harold who wore the crown. William's victory was not just a conquest of swords and steel. It was the opening of a new chapter, a seismic shift in language, law, architecture, and power. The Norman banners fluttering in the wind that evening weren't just signs of triumph, they were omens of a transformed kingdom. This was the day England became something entirely new. When Edward the Confessor drew his final breath, he left behind more than just an empty throne. He left a storm of ambition roaring into the void. With no direct heir to carry the royal torch, the kingdom stood on the edge of uncertainty. From across the Channel, Duke William of Normandy seized his moment. He claimed, boldly and without hesitation, that Edward had once promised him the crown of England. But back in London, Harold Godwinson moved faster. With swift political cunning, he was crowned Harold II, wrapping himself in royal power before William could set foot on English soil. To William, this was not just betrayal, it was theft, and he would not let it go unpunished. On September 28, 1066, William landed in Pevensey, Sussex, with an army built for domination. Mounted knights clad in chainmail, skilled archers with deadly precision, and disciplined infantry ready to carve their legacy into the land. But while William was preparing his campaign, Harold was locked in battle elsewhere. To the north, the Norwegian king Harald Hardrada had launched his own bid for the throne, descending upon England like a northern tempest. Harold II raced to Stamford Bridge, where he crushed the Viking invasion in a brutal clash. Victory was his, but at a steep cost. His men were weary, wounded, and scattered. And yet, with barely time to bury the fallen, Harold turned south. Driven by urgency, he marched across the country at breakneck speed to face William head-on. But exhaustion lingered like a shadow, and William, fresh and calculating, was ready to strike with unrelenting force. As the pale sun rose on October 14, 1066, a thick fog of anticipation clung to Senlac Hill. The stage was set. At the summit stood the English shield wall, unyielding, disciplined, a living fortress of men and iron. Shoulder to shoulder, Harold's warriors held their ground, their axes and swords gleaming with resolve. Below them, the Normans assembled, their ranks layered with precision, archers in front, infantry in the middle, and cavalry waiting like coiled serpents at the rear. When the first horn blasted through the morning air, the hillside trembled. Arrows whistled skyward like swarms of angry bees, but they bounced harmlessly against the English shields. Then came the infantry, then the horses, charging uphill with the fury of a storm. But the English line held, fierce and unbreakable. Time and again, William's forces surged forward, only to be shattered by the unrelenting wall. Frustration swelled, but William was more than a warrior. He was a tactician. Sensing opportunity, he ordered his men to feign retreat. It was a masterstroke. The English, believing the Normans were fleeing, broke formation and chased them down the hill. That moment, just a heartbeat, was all William needed. Like a trap snapping shut, the Normans turned, surrounded, and struck with brutal force. The shield wall, once impenetrable, splintered. Chaos rippled through the English ranks, and as the sun dipped low, fate delivered its cruelest blow. Harold II, the last Anglo-Saxon king, fell, some say with an arrow in the eye, others by sword, but his death marked the fall of a kingdom. By nightfall, the hillside was littered with bodies and broken banners, and the crown of England lay in Norman hands. Victory at Hastings was not the end of William's ambition. it was the beginning of an upheaval that would reshape the very bones of England. On Christmas Day, 1066, beneath the vaulted arches of Westminster Abbey, William of Normandy was crowned King of England. From that moment forward, he would not just be known as a duke or a conqueror, but as William the Conqueror, a title etched in stone and blood. Yet the crown was more than a symbol. It was the key to a sweeping transformation, one that would ripple through every village, every court, and every language spoken across the land. The old Anglo-Saxon elite was swiftly displaced, replaced by loyal Norman lords. Lands were seized, titles reassigned, and the English feudal system, once fluid and regional, was reforged under strict Norman rule. Castles of stone rose like giants from the earth, fortresses of dominance looming over rebellious hearts. Motte and Bailey strongholds pierced the skyline, symbols of both protection and control. And with the conquerors came their language. French poured into the veins of English, reshaping vocabulary, law, and courtly life. What had once been simple speech grew rich with foreign nuance. But William's conquest didn't stop with soldiers and scribes. He commissioned a monument to his triumph, the Bayeux Tapestry, a sprawling 70-meter epic of embroidery. Not merely decoration, it was a calculated stroke of propaganda, a vivid, thread-bound chronicle of William's rightful victory, casting him as chosen, just, inevitable. In its woven panels, the story of Hastings lives on, told not with words, but with thread, color, and the silent echo of destiny fulfilled. The Battle of Hastings was never just a fight for a crown. It was the crucible in which a new England was forged. With the fall of Harold and the rise of William, the island nation did more than change rulers. It changed its course. What followed was not erasure, but fusion. Anglo-Saxon roots entwined with Norman branches, creating a culture that was neither one nor the other, but something entirely new. The English language itself began to transform, absorbing French like rainfall into soil, blooming with new expressions of power, law, and literature. Towering cathedrals and fortified castles rose across the land, carved in Norman stone, echoing the architecture of a people who came not just to conquer, but to stay. This fusion reached beyond borders. William's hold on both England and Normandy bound the two realms together in a delicate dance that would ripple across Europe for generations. Alliances, rivalries, and wars would be shaped by that singular moment in 1066, when a duke crossed the sea and claimed a kingdom. The English legal system, administrative practices, and even the fabric of aristocracy were all reshaped under the weight of that legacy. And though centuries have passed, the memory of Hastings remains. It marks the twilight of the Anglo-Saxon era and the dawn of a dynasty that would chart England's rise into a medieval power. In every stone of a Norman keep, in every borrowed word spoken today, the echoes of that October day still whisper, a reminder that a single battle can stretch its shadow across 1,000 years.